right? Yeah, exactly. Well, just like there's no issues with our email is flawless, while Google writes their learning management system and their
USC.
Yeah. So all of my Google stuff will talk.
And they have integrated Google Docs with their.
Yes. Yep. It's ridiculous. Okay. There's that.
They've been doing that for a long time.
And I'm going to share my screen content. We'll get started here. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, welcome and happy Friday. It'll be a lot of fun to dive in and talk about unit planning. I know there's nothing else you guys would rather do with a Friday afternoon than discuss this topic. We live for this time of the 3-year cycle. No, this is great. We're going to go through things today and kind of do an initial orientation to the divisional planning process. I feel like you guys are really far away, like we're doing some kind of an interview. So Steve, please tell us.
So it's us versus you.
So this is the first of 5 of these workshops, which will happen about every 4 weeks or so. And really what I want to say at the very top is today my goal is to give you enough of the sense of the framework that you can actively take me up on my encouragement to trust the process. I'm the kind of person that when someone uses that phrase, trust the process, I need to know what the puzzle is, like where are we going, and to enough degree that I can, okay, I'll trust the process. But through these workshops, we're going to really be very intentional about building each block at a time. And so you don't need to worry about getting too far out in front or that you're going to be behind. The goal, and you'll see today, is to use these workshops to drive us to our completion date of June 1 and to get you there in a kind of a moderated fashion, and you're going to be right on point if you kind of keep up with the work that we're doing in the workshops and then the recommended work in between the workshops. So today in workshop 1, we're going to just talk kind of at the macro level of a little bit about how we plan. This whole group is a part of the so I probably shouldn't record this session. We're all a part of the mid-year leadership group, so this won't be as maybe foreign as it might be to a chief planner who maybe doesn't sit in that group. And we have a few divisions actually that identified new folks, which is great, to really lead their strategic planning charge. We'll talk a bit, just for reminder's sake, of how we plan, the basic process that we're following. We'll take a look at some important resources that are available to you as you plan at the unit level, major dates that will be important for you to keep in mind, a quick kind of primer on some of our core terminology so that when we're using some of these words in the planning process, they make sense for the work that we're about here at Concordia. We'll take a look at again at those 2 critical strategies, which we were actually all a part of forming at mid-year, and that will really lead the planning process across the system. We'll talk a bit, Michelle and Chris will talk a bit about key performance indicators and what that's going to look like at the divisional level this round of planning. And then we'll talk about kind of your next pieces between now and when we get back together to meet again. So that's kind of the map of the time we have together. We're a small group, so just interrupt. If you've got a question, don't feel bashful about just jumping in and asking for clarification. That is great. So in terms of how we plan, the divisional planning follows the university level planning by about a quarter. So we're about a quarter behind where the University Plan Committee is in its process. That's by design, so that we're kind of right behind where they're working right now on, they've got their KPI goals done and that's ready to roll. Now they're finalizing sort of strategy statements. And so that will benefit us at the division level. And I do say us because University Affairs will be planning in that divisional space as well. That'll benefit our work as we kind of see what's leading out at the university level. But really how we plan, our values and our approach, the 2 big pieces I always want to bring up for us is that we take an integrated approach and we take a decision-focused approach. And by integrated, right, we're members of the Society for College and University Planning. It's an international organization that really embraces kind of whole system planning in higher ed. So we're bringing into the room academics, student development, enrollment management, as well as the operational units, and really kind of taking an integrated full tilt approach as opposed to just kind of having discrete planning only for academics, only for facilities and whatnot. Decision focus, though, I think is the most important kind of value that we carry into our planning. And that is, it's not so much for us about our strategic planning, but about our ability to create pathways for strategic decision making, right? And so as we work, and more intentionally, I think this round than we did 3 years ago, specifically in shaping strategy statements in the university plan and then within our divisional plans, Our goal is to really craft strategy statements that kind of constrain our solution pathway, right? That we clearly identify what the goal is going to be, where we want to land, and then we're careful about mapping out strategies that really articulate, and this is how we're going to play the game. And we do that in a way that allows folks who are down waterfall from us to make decisions and to feel empowered to make decisions with a sense of clarity of kind of what the boundaries are and kind of where the ship is going. And so whether it's at that big university level or at the divisional level, or even if you choose to bake this into a department level work, that we're creating a sense of how we all interact and how we make decisions in a strategic fashion. A quick word about departments, because with academic schools, we are not in this round, just like 3 years ago, we didn't require divisions to follow a certain process. And this round we kind of are. This round, we are not requiring departments to follow any kind of specific way of planning. And I also know that's very discrete to each academic school, depending on how they approach that work. You can choose, however, Steve, particularly in your case with arts and sciences being so broad, you may choose to say, you know what, gang, we're gonna, however you do your planning, we're gonna all kind of follow a version of this or whatever you decide to do. You've got that purview as deans to kind of decide how you want the departments to plug into this in your planning. So
just to be clear,
yeah.
In my case, the division and the department are
one and the same. You got it. Yep, absolutely. And that's true on, I think, most of the operational side of things. All right, so just a quick reminder of kind of where we are in our process. And so as you recall back at mid-year, we talked about, so this will be a familiar visual for you, kind of that map, right, of the strategic planning process. I know it's a little tricky to see. You'll get access to this slide deck after the presentation. But as you recall, that top part, right, that's that work that we really have kind of been about shaping the mission, vision themes. Those are those strategic imperatives and thinking carefully about our core ideology, which Michael Porter with Harvard Business Review will define as our purpose and our values. Slightly differentiated from mission, right? So purpose is kind of the core unchanging reason you exist. Mission can change over time. So let's use CUW as an example. Our mission has changed dramatically since 1881, when our mission was to equip young males for clergy roles, right? Now that mission is much broader and different, and yet the fundamental purpose remains pretty much intact: to develop people in mind, body, and spirit for lives of service to Christ. That maybe not in those words, but that intentionality of using education in that way has been our purpose from the beginning. So that piece is really significant. That's the kind of who we are, why we exist, and sort of broadly how we define the game. Those strategic imperatives, or again, as we call them, the mission, vision themes, those pillars, is how we kind of think about the game that we're about at Concordia. And then we get into the big level, what we measure, to kind of say, okay, if this is who we are, why we exist, how we define the game, what do we measure to know when we've crossed that finish line? And that's when we get at things like the university-wide learning outcomes, the liberal arts outcomes, the global ends, the key performance indicators. Those are those macro kind of big level measurement pieces that we sort of know, okay, we're tracking in the right direction with this core ideology. I want to say a quick word though about how important this first part of the graphic is to our board. So our board, you may have heard the phrase, is a policy governance board. Policy governance is a different way of governance. It's a different style of governance that is very much focused on just the top half of this graphic. So in policy-based governance or policy governance, the board sets policy to ensure that these ends are achieved. Who will be served, what will be accomplished, for whom, and at what cost. And so those global ends that now we've seen kind of roll out into the core and this different work we're doing, that's all kind of thinking that the board would see as sort of these global ends, core ideology, who will be served, what will we do for them, for whom, and at what cost. After that, everything below that sort of measurement, kind of macro level measurement line, is what we would call in a policy governance system, it's inside the box. The board actually writes policies, and if you've read a policy manual, it's really kind of weird. It's written in a very negative way. The president shall not fail to, and I'm on a new board, and someone actually is new to this style of governance and said, why is this so negative? Like, why is this written as such like a limiting thing? What the board is building is the box. And the board is saying, anything that happens in the box, we don't really care. I mean, they care, but we don't really care as long as the output is this. And so that's where the board, that's where you'll see them reach into the box and start to fuss with things. If the core ideology, you know, who we are, what we do, who we serve, and at what cost, and how we measure that is somehow not meeting their kind of parameters, right? But everything past that, including the strategic plan, is inside the box. And so in our policy, we actually have gotten more, we've clarified, technically in a policy governance system, the board does not approve the strategic plan. We do give them the courtesy of receiving the strategic plan, but technically it's inside the box. And as long as it's not breaking the policy limitations, we can do whatever we want inside there to a degree, right? So that I say that just to give you awareness as leaders of why that top piece is really critical for our work, obviously, but also critical in terms of our governance and how the board leads the organization. So then, as you guys remember, at mid-year, we got into the critical strategies. That was the new addition to our process, adding these kind of overarching strategic moves, how we play the game, that are going to sit on everyone's plan. So all of us will carry those two leading strategies into our planning work. And we'll have discrete strategies unique to our specific endeavors: advancement, arts and sciences, health professions, university affairs, right, OIE. But we will all work in some way on those top two, which actually is going to be a lot of fun. Under that, then we get into the 3-year university plan. That's what we're working on right now, right? So setting those big kind of KPI measurement goals, or the outcome-based, this is what will be achieved, how we're going to know we've crossed the finish line. And then the strategies, objectives, and tactics to achieve that. Any questions about this? I know this is rehash, it's review, but it can be helpful just to kind of remember where we sit. All right. And then we get into this piece of the work, which was the bottom half of the grid, below the double smiley face, because it's so much fun. These are the discrete divisional infrastructural plans that would be operational, right? So that's kind of what we do, you know, into the unit planning, the divisional, we're using the word divisional planning, the what we do. And we could bucket those into things like student development master plans and infrastructural plans or academic master plans. All of our divisional plans would fit in one of those buckets. But that's the work we're in right now. And then supporting all of it and kind of feeding up through all of it, how do we pay for it all, right? And that's the strategic finance piece. When all of it works in harmony, right? We have vision achievement. We live the mission to achieve the vision. Or actually, as Kurt Bickle would say it, and I like this turn of phrase, we live the vision to achieve the mission. So we're pursuing that direction. Then we're just aces, right? All the way around. So that's where we are at this point. A couple of important tools and resources for you. So you know where you are. Now, what kind of things do I have to go to work with? You have two really critical ones. The first is the University Planner, which is the SharePoint site that you guys should all have access to as mid-year planners. And that will continue to be a place that we update. In fact, I'll go there real quick so you can see it. Let me make sure that I am. Let me just make sure that this is actually still broadcasting. Yep, I'm screen sharing. Yay, okay. The university planning page, you guys are probably, like I said, pretty familiar with this. We'll continue to update things here, but over here on this tab, there'll be specific things about unit planning that will be dropped into there for you. So just kind of what, you know, make sure you've got that bookmarked, that you're able to get to it. And we'll obviously pump information out, but also here, and when we get to it in a short while, Michelle and Chris will talk about key performance indicators. That's where those live as well, and where you can find those. So this is a really important resource, a really important tool in your work. And then also the University Planning Committee. So the folks who sit on that committee, and in this room, because we've got deans, you've been invited to participate as it fits your schedule. Just knowing how busy deans are. We've had some come in and out, some it just hasn't worked. But just know that you've got access to that group. Roy sits on that in terms of in this space. Bill Cario sits on that. You've got Leah who sits on that consistently. Andy Miller has been sitting in for Liz Polzine, but she's kind of back with us. I'm thinking academics in terms of what will benefit you guys, in terms of people you might just want to talk to. Bernard, Michael Uden. So know that you can go to those folks at any point, or of course to me. And so those are some resources that I want you to feel like you've got available to you. So we have then some important dates, and I'll explain how the workshop dates will work. Roughly every 4 or 5 weeks, we will have these workshops. Once this workshop is complete today, I'll send out an email that'll include the doodle poll that will invite people to actually complete their best availability for the next, probably the next 3. I don't want to get too far out because people's schedules change so completely. And know that my goal is to pick the dates, or at least give 2 options for every workshop that work the best for the majority of people. I told the group that met earlier this week, I did actually try the Outlook tool of like, when could we all possibly meet? And it was like October of 2019. I mean, it was hilarious. I was like, okay, it's not really gonna help us. But if you have to miss or it just doesn't work, I'll always record them, and then also I'm happy to set up a one-on-one. Amy can help set that up, and we'll just go through it real quick and make sure you feel like you know what you need to do. But what we'll be working on in each, so you can kind of see the puzzle. Obviously here we're talking orientation, and then we'll specifically talk about KPI goal setting. In our next workshop, we're going to actually be workshopping. You're going to be working on strategy formation and writing strategy statements as a part of that workshop time together. In the 3rd round, we'll complete that work. We'll kind of polish it up and strengthen it. And then we'll work on writing objectives to tether to those strategies. Meeting 4, complete those, and we'll write tactics. And meeting 5, we'll talk about refining that. And then we'll talk about best practices for activation and what that looks like to actually bring it to life in your space and in your context, because really a plan is only as effective or only as worthwhile as it is effective that we actually live it out. Our goal is a June 1st plan completion date. The week of June 18th, we will be scheduling the strategy showcase. You might recall that from a few years ago, where you kind of strut your stuff and talk about what you're gonna be working on, and it'll be fun. We'll have snacks, it'll be great. And so that's what's coming in terms of big dates. It doesn't work like that for grown-ups, does it? I know. If we were college students and they promised us pizza, we would all be there, but you know, I'm 43, so that doesn't work so well anymore. Margaritas maybe though, I'll be there. So those are the big dates. So the 2 critical strategies, you have all seen these before. These are the 2, and again, you'll have this slide deck, so you'll have this at the ready. These are those 2 critical strategies that are sitting atop everyone's plan. So they will be baked into the university plan, of course. There will then also be specific strategies in those performance categories of the university plan. And I'll list those off for you. Those performance categories are academic planning, student development, enrollment management, operations and administration, and strategic finance or resource base. We're using those same performance categories again this time around for the University Plan Committee to do its work. However, I am really contemplating just having all strategies rolled up onto one strategy sheet. So while they're kind of owned discreetly by certain areas that have more expertise in a certain space, they really will be the strategies of the university. But these 2 actually are sitting on each of those performance category teams, have these 2 sitting on their slate, as well as the kind of specific ones they're working on in their performance category. And as they go into the writing of objectives and tactics at the university level, every one of those performance category groups will write objectives and tactics for these 2. The same will happen at the divisional level. And this is going to be really, I actually think this is going to be a lot of fun. So I was talking to Steve Hibbard and Jerry today. They happened to find me in the back of the library where I was trying desperately to get some writing done without anybody finding me, but they found me. And we talked about how much fun this will be to kind of figure out, like, how will that look for facilities? You know, how will facilities work hard to implement optimal student-centered systems? What is that going to look like for them in terms of how they think about space, or how they handle housekeeping, or how they handle, right? I mean, so there's ways to make it applicable that are very creative, actually. And so it's kind of fun to put this constraint on ourselves and then think strategically how we can achieve our goal state. A couple of things, just a few quick slides on terminology. Now that I'm putting this up, I'm realizing I didn't fix the example the way I said I would, but so you're going to see an example slide that the 3 of us will make so much better for you. So there are a million ways to use these words, right? When it comes to strategic planning, you can Google it and you can find 15 different definitions when it comes to strategic planning of what is meant by the word strategy or what is meant by the word objective. I mentioned I'm on this new board and they actually use these words completely in a totally different way, right? So what's important is that we have a shared kind of resonance around how we use these words. So in our planning process, when we talk about goals, we are talking about a broad primary outcome. It's measurable. And in our case, When we use the word goal, we are tethering it to a key performance indicator for the university. So when we're talking about goals, we're talking about these kind of big outcomes that, increased enrollment by 975% in the next year, decreased tuition dependency by 5% in the next 10 years, whatever it might be. Those, when we're talking goal language, that's the level at which we're speaking. Then we get into our use of the word strategy. And this is really important. When we think about strategy in our planning at Concordia, we're talking about the approach, the way we will play the game. So if you're a basketball player, it would be when the coach pulls you in and says, we're gonna use a motion offense, right? So it's kind of a broad statement that puts a degree of constraint on our solution pathway as we work toward those goals, those broad primary outcome goals. And what that does is it provides enough constraint into the solution pathway that people actually can get really creative because they understand where the fences are in terms of how we engage the game. So this could be things like we are going to put a premium on international student recruitment or involvement, right? That is a strategic constraint that we're putting on our pursuit of, let's say, an enrollment goal. So again, these are meant to help with down waterfall decision making. So when you think about it that way, that's pretty important. So someone in your team who is at the leadership level or a department chair or frontline, support staff can in the moment make decisions that are strategic and smart and effective, and they feel like they know the direction the ship is going. So that's how we want to consider strategies. Underneath strategies, then, we write objectives. And the language here is usually what we apply to like SMART goals, right? So think of them as SMART objectives. The objectives are measurable steps that are time-bound, they're specific, they're precise, they're measurable, kind of who will do what by when type language, that are measurable steps that we take in pursuit of a strategy. So along the solution pathway. Again, pursuing that goal state. And then tactics are the ones usually people go to first, right? It's the action set. It's the list of discrete tasks that we're going to actually put together to pursue the objective associated with the strategy in pursuit of the goal state. And often this is where we fall short. Like people will turn in what they think is a list of strategies and it is actually a list of tactics. I just today actually put some feedback into the kind of planner document for the UPC. There's one in there for strategic finance where you'll see I put a comment in. It's awesome. It's totally a tactic. And it's the very last one. It was having the VP's quarterly producer report, right? So that, right, totally, it's like a tactical kind of thing. Or you could maybe even write it objectively. And I suggest, like, I have a hunch the strategy we're maybe thinking about is this. So it's really easy to do, and we tend to do it a lot. I do it all the time. I write, especially in the marketing comms world, you tend to write tactics and be like, well, this is our strategy. Said another way, goals are brief and clear. They're statements of an outcome to be reached within a specific time frame. For us, that's in the next 3-year cycle. So again, ours are tied to KPIs. This is an outcome that will happen in that KPI space in the next 3 years. Goals don't tell us how to do it, however. So a goal statement in our world would say, reduce tuition dependency by 15% in the next 3 years. Doesn't tell us how. It just gives us that broad outcome. And so we have a sense of this is what results will look like. And it's measurable because it's tied, in our case, specifically to metrics. In comparison, objectives, as I said, are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic. So think of them as stepping stones that move you along the solution pathway. Here's our example. We'll fix it. We'll make it better. We'll make it better for Concordia. So if we were working in like the tech space, it might look like something like this. Let's imagine one of their KPIs is sales revenue, right? So they might rewrite that goal actually to be like grow sales revenue by 25% in the next 3 years. That would be the goal. Then their strategy becomes, we're going to take a persuasive approach by aligning ourselves with well-established manufacturers in the marketplace. That's a constraint on the solution pathway. Then the objective, very measurable, what's going to happen, according to what report, how we're going to do this, that's an objective. And then tactically, this is an actual step we will take to achieve the objective in pursuit of the strategic constraint to achieve the goal state. It's kind of but let's put Chris and Michelle on the spot to write one for Concordia. How might the same example look?
You're up, because you had
I
a
can
good
do
one.
You had a really good one.
You had a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good one last time.
We used the one on, meeting on Monday about the Lutheran KPI, just to keep our percentage above, I want to say it's 40% here and 38%, I think there. And then the strategy would be to increase our outreach with our Lutheran constituents. Then the objective was to specifically host more high school and middle school events, both at the Lutheran high schools and here on campus. And then the tactic was specific ones, like financial aid nights at the high schools, we host some middle school, church work profession events. So those would be the different tactics that would roll up to each of those. But all going back to that KPI of our Lutheran percentage.
Does that make sense?
So the goals relate to the KPI?
Always. Yep. The goal is always tied to the KPI.
And the difference between a KPI and a goal is?
The KPI is just the term of the measure. They're the key measures that we're looking at institutionally.
In terms of the goal? Yeah. Yeah, you'll see when we show what that measure is.
So we're going to talk about KPIs, actually. So perfect time.
Which is the weirdest acronym. It drives me crazy.
Well, and Kurt Bickle always calls them KIPS, and he always has, and he always will. And he's always like, so you're KIPS. And I'm like, KIPS? Like, I'm married to an Englishman, so a kipper is something you eat. And I'm like, oh, you mean KPIs. Gotcha. So I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet, but I'm also going to bring up, this is really hard to see, and I apologize. I'm also going to bring up this document because I think this shows, this is a draft document where the UPC is working on some things. Let me blow this up really nice and big here. So this is a draft document, and you'll see here, these are KPI goals that they're working on writing. So traditional undergrad retention rate is a KPI on the KPI slate for the university, and they've written increase by 2% over predicted rate. So that is the goal state for that particular, so that would be an example of a goal statement. But Michelle, do you want to talk us through a little bit of KPI magic here? I'm going to try to make this bigger. And you all have access to this. This is within the, it's a little easier to see on this screen here.
Yeah.
On the University Planner site, you've got access to this. But Michelle, kind of talk us through it, because we are changing our approach to KPIs from 3 years ago at the divisional level. So I want to make sure everyone feels clear about this.
Sure, yeah. So our group of the KPI czars from the various UPC category units has spent the last year really looking at what we had from the last plan, looking to see which KPIs we could actually measure, what the source of measurement was, what the system of record is, and then laying out with the individual units what those 3-year and 5-year goals would be, and really our current measure, and then taking that current measure and developing the 3 and 5-year goals. So you can see on here, like Gretchen was just saying, we have some, like in academic planning, for example, if that's right there on top. There are some that are the board end, the global ends. But those are the ones that we actually still are in development with, and we're hoping through the use of Blackboard and with Learn that we'll be able to come up with a method of assessment for some of those. But all the other KPIs on this spreadsheet have a source of measurement and a system of record. So for example, we have TUG retention rate, we have now a post-traditional retention rate, which is for our accelerated and graduate populations, and then the TUG graduation rate. So each of these areas then, like I said, has a source of measure, has a current value based on last academic year, and then has a 3-year and 5-year goal, which you can kind of see.
Yeah, I'll scroll over here. Yep, here we go.
What we plan to do this year is utilize the university KPIs within each of our divisions. So instead of divisions having their own KPIs that may or may not fall to what the university is looking for as a way to unify the strategic planning, we will utilize these KPIs with the divisions. So what I'll be doing is setting up a meeting with each of the chief planners from the unit to just review all of these KPIs in each category and help you pick ones that can be utilized within your own division. So I'll use total enrollment because that's an easy one that when you have schools, we can easily roll down where we will have the university KPI of total enrollment, but then we'll also be able to look at it for the School of Arts and Sciences and for the School of Health Profession. That way we can actually take the university KPI and roll it down to your level so you can see what the measurements are for your own group. And that's where we can use ones across the board where some might be more academic, some will be more finance related, but we'll help you pick out ones that can easily be broken down, which can help your team kind of see how they're actually doing work that rolls up to the university level, which is really nice. What we're doing then, because we know you have other things that you need and want to measure, is calling those other things that we won't even develop until after we see your strategies and your objectives, will be what we're going to call key metrics. So key metrics will be other things that you want to measure within your unit, but don't roll up to these university KPIs, just so we keep that language very clear as to what the KPIs are. And then the metrics will be other things. But it's really easy to start, and we saw this as our university planning committee. When you start with KPIs, people just get numbers in their head, and then everything does become tactics. And so it's hard to kind of separate those out. So we're asking your groups then to figure out what your strategies and objectives are and those related tactics. And from there, we can figure out what is it exactly that you're trying to measure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for example, in university affairs, let's look at the marketing piece. One of the key metrics that we really care about is cost per lead, right? And what that looks like and how we're checking that out over time and over student type and all of those things. So while it's not a university KPI, it's definitely a key metric in our area. So also too, this helps the board too, because you're like, no, what are the KPIs and how many KPIs are, so these are the KPIs for Concordia. And then within that will be discrete key metrics that are, important to the various divisions.
So, for example, I just went to the advancement tab on this screen, and there are 5. Through this process, we're going to take a fresh look at all those, say, yeah, this one really hasn't mattered. And
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and what we'll utilize is that same format of how we handle the university KPIs, and we'll ask everyone to kind of match that system. And so what we'll do is look at what you had on your last plan, and then look at the new university KPIs and see what we can utilize for each division.
And then build it out deeply the way we've built these out.
Right.
And some of these, not all of them have systems of record behind them right now. And I was thinking about this after our last meeting. I'm kind of excited to take a look at the different tactics that come up, and especially that get tied to goals and KPIs at the institutional level that don't have, because some of those tactics might develop out those systems of record and support data to support the KPI in the next. So it kind of close the loop. So.
And for a number of these that exist in analytics, what's nice about it is multiple reports on here already exist. And for us to be able to just roll them down to your unit is very easy. And it's also nice because then you'll have a dashboard that you can utilize for your unit to say, here's where we are sitting into what our KPI is now versus what our 3-year goal is and our 5-year goal is, just so that your team can have access to that. Because I think that's one of the most important things with strategic planning is making sure people actually know how we're doing as we go. So this way, so many of these reports already exist, so we'll have a good way to show it to your group.
There's not an action that you need to worry about for this step. Michelle will be reaching out to you to set up one-on-one time with you to go through this together. So between now and our next meeting, she'll be working on that with you. So you don't need to really worry about that particular piece. Any questions at all? Let me go back here. Just a few more things to share. Another item that we will, in the kind of recap email from this meeting that you'll have access to, is going to be the SWOT analysis for the institution. And that institutional SWOT was developed after quite a lot of work. We did the World Cafes, if you recall, last spring into the summer. That work, along with an internal and external environmental analysis and a competitive analysis, kind of helped the UPC build the SWOT analysis. Then we took that SWOT, which was quite lengthy, and did a cross-impact analysis with the KPIs. So here's what we think here's what we believe our strengths to be, but here's what we're really interested in measuring. And so where do we see our real priorities? Or here are all the threats that we see out there, but here's what we're interested in measuring and what we really want to achieve. So how can we winnow that list to the ones that are really important for us to address? And so you'll see, I'm going to share with you kind of what the final brief set, if you will. I encourage you in your department planning, division planning, to consider starting with a SWOT. You can use the university SWOT, certainly, but if there's a modified approach you'd like to take, and we're really not mandating a certain way to do that. I mean, everybody has their own way, but I would encourage you to consider whatever pathway you choose, to consider that cross-impact piece. Even if it's just a dialogue with kind of the folks in your division who are going to really assist with planning, it's so healthy to just kind of put that list of here's what we think our SWOT, looks like. All right. And here are the KPIs that really matter to us. So how can we winnow this set to the top, like 3 to 5 or 5 to 8 in each of these 4 categories? And it just kind of builds consensus. And it's just a good place to start in terms of having some analysis and some sense of a snapshot of your landscape unique to your division. So if you'd like help facilitating something like that, certainly can do that for you so that you can be a participant. Happy to make that happen. Just reach out. We'll schedule that. I think probably between the 3 of us, we could help everybody out in some way, because it is healthy sometimes for you to be able to just participate and not have to worry about
I talked to a couple of units after the meeting on Monday, and where they thought it would be helpful is sometimes their unit is so separate from other units on campus that it was really nice for them to see how their other employees could hear what other people at the university are thinking. Like, oh, that many people said continuing ed or partnerships should be a priority. Oh, we should think about that more in our unit. So I think that's where that's nice, is not only just within your own school or unit SWOT, but how did the rest of the university view that process?
Yeah, very good. So watch for that in the recap, and the recap email will come this afternoon. So next steps, you'll get the recap email. It'll go to the whole group. I wanted to wait until after today's time with you to send that out. You'll see the Doodle scheduling poll for upcoming workshops. So please take that, because I would like to get these scheduled probably next week. So the sooner you can just quickly go through that and click what's available for you and what's not, and we'll move on. Someone asked, why don't you just use Outlook? Why don't you just see where we've got holes? Well, this is my own personal value. Just because there's an open space on your calendar does not mean it is my right to hijack it. So all of you are super busy leaders, and you have lots of projects you're working on and lots of things you're trying to accomplish. And just because you have a hole doesn't mean it's my right to eat it, right? And take it away from you. So it allows you to assess what's the best time for you to do this work in terms of your project load. That's why. Think about completing a divisional SWOT. You're going to get access to something called the planner guide for your division. Every division will have their own. It's a Google document that will be open and editable. Why? It does allow us to kind of have eyeballs on, are we moving? Are we working? Or do we have a division that's hasn't done anything yet? So please consider using that document as a place where you just kind of, play around, a sandbox, if you will. You'll have your meeting with the Office of Institutional Effectiveness to understand your key performance indicators and to set your discrete KPI goals. And we'll drop those into the planner guide as well. But at each step, I will do my very best to just communicate with you often and frequently so you kind of know what's coming, what you need to work on, what you don't need to worry about. But at any point in time, just call. It's funny, I just had this happen in a class last night where it's okay, just you keep saying trust the process. What is the end game, right? I just kind of, I need to know a little bit about what the pathway is going to look like. I am happy to kind of open that up for you at any point in time so you kind of feel like you know where something plugs in. But at the same time, don't worry about this. We'll keep bringing it up in front of you and just worry about the piece at a time, and we'll get to our June 1st goal. So that is the Dog and Pony Show.
That's the real basic question.
Yes.
The strategic planning process, right? So this strategic plan that we had, 15-18, we're done with it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're building something else.
Correct.
And so anything that we've built prior to this, we're starting fresh, or are we looking at our past APIs, but we're not using those anymore, correct? So.
Well, some of them might have actually been metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So I can look at that with you, and we can decide what rolls up into the university, what's one that you still want to keep as a metric. Yeah.
And you may well, in fact, I would think you would say, we checked this off, done. We accomplished this, or man, we really didn't knock the ball out of the park on that one. Or, I wouldn't lose that good work.
No,
You carry it forward.
We just did our 5-year where we want to be in general. So we call that.
And similarly, when we get to the stage where you start playing around with strategies, I said this to the group the other day, I meant to say it today as well. Don't let yourself get too caught up in, oh, is this a strategy or is this an objective? Is this a tactic or is this just get it out? We'll help navigate that. And you never want to lose that really good work. You want to kind of keep that good work because it can come back into play at other, places through the process. So same thing about your old plans.
Yeah, we did our objectives first.
Yeah, we did. And then we went, what are we really trying to do here? Mm-hmm. Again, that's actually, I do you're all at a level of leadership where I think you kind of intuitively sometimes know the strategy frame. Does that make sense? Like you kind of have an intuition about the basic rules of engagement. The goal is to unleash that down waterfall decision-making and to empower more broadly the system to be moving in the same strategic direction. And that's really why those strategy statements I think are really important, because they kind of help people orient to like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. And this is how I can think creatively and contribute creatively toward that direction. Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's that. Cool. All right. Thank you guys very much. I am going to turn this off. Yes. We hope you enjoyed the presentation there. So those of you who couldn't make it this time, we hope you make it next time.